You know what's actually crazy? Nothing spectacular happened yesterday in terms of views. It was a pretty regular day, but I got like 3 times as many subs as I normally would for that many views because I told people that if they're one of those people that watch all my videos but don't subscribe, to go ahead and subscribe. Really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy the NBA, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day. I'm looking at you, person that watches my videos every day but isn't subscribed. It really does help me out. I would appreciate it a lot. Like, that's literally the only thing I can think of as to why I had so many more subs yesterday for what is a relatively normal day in terms of views. But then Insight also reminded me to give a shout out to people that watch and like every single video, so I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Also, people always make fun of me when I wear this shirt. I love this shirt. I don't see anything wrong with this, so you can make fun of it if you want to, but I'm gonna wear what I want. All right, so in today's video, we're basically gonna be talking about the fact that the Cleveland Cavaliers just can't have nice things for whatever reason. Hold on, really quickly, let me check their roster. Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, Kevin Love, no LeBron? Okay, yeah, they're going to be a train wreck. That's honestly how it's felt for basically all of the 2000s. If LeBron James is not on the roster, it's going to be a train wreck in Cleveland. And even at times when he is there in terms of the locker room and things like that, it's going to be an issue. But the specific thing that's happening here with the Cavaliers, there's a lot of things that have happened to them this season. But the thing that we're specifically talking about today is the fact that their coach that just signed a 5-year contract is probably going to be gone either this week or at the end of the season. It doesn't seem like there's any scenario in which John Beilein remains the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers beyond this season. Now, this is actually a really interesting situation because I felt like through the first 10 or 15 games, this was a Cavs team that actually looked pretty good and looked pretty well coached. It looked like they were playing hard. I felt like the whole 2-guard system that Beilein used in college for so long would work pretty well with what the Cavs were trying to build, with having Darius Garland and Colin Sexton trying to play together. I felt like because they had so many younger players on their roster, that this would be a good fit. Typically, the college coaching thing does not work out, but Beilein was a very, very good college coach at multiple different places before coming over to the Cavs, so I was at least a little bit optimistic about it in the beginning, but now it's coming out, and there have been bad reports throughout the year, but basically everybody's coming out and saying now that they feel comfortable revealing that basically from the jump, the players just were not a fan. He was, I guess, trying to create a more college-like environment. He was trying to treat players like college players, which is an issue a lot of times when college coaches come to the NBA, and it just wasn't clicking with these guys. Like, they'd been away from college for a while, or they just got out of college. They want to be NBA players. They don't want to be coached by a college guy, and it's not working out. And on the other hand, Beilein is just not used to losing this many games. Even in a bad college basketball season, you still have a chance to do some things near the end of the year, conference tournament, things like that. But for him, I mean, he's 67 years old, and his team has won like 15 games past the All-Star break now in the NBA, and it's not a good environment. I'm sure it's not what he had hoped for. But at the same time, like, realistically coming into it, what did he really expect? Like, did he think that he was going to come in and lead this team to like 40 or 45 wins with this roster? Maybe he did. Maybe that was a legitimate expectation, but it feels now in hindsight like we should have seen this coming, that this is a guy that's used to being successful, that has been in college for a very, very long time, has never coached as a head coach in the NBA, and is now going to take over what is very clearly a rebuild, and it's actually going to work. I don't know if I should have been nearly as optimistic as I was in the beginning of all of this. But like I said, it looks like he's going to be out either this week or by the end of the season. As of the recording of this video, it has not been made official, but all of this stuff came out during All-Star weekend about the fact that he's either going to step down or they're going to have a conversation and just fire him. And the interesting part is I read an ESPN article that said that JB Bickerstaff, who's the assistant coach, who presumably is going to become the interim coach, I feel like he's been an interim coach a couple of different places. They had already planned on him taking over for Beilein eventually. If things went well, it would have been in a retirement type situation where Beilein, stepped down and Bickerstaff succeeded him. Yeah. In like a succession plan type situation, but now he's just going to take over on an interim basis and maybe be the long-term coach down the road. Who knows? But this is just another issue in a long line of them for the Cavs this season. The Kevin Love situation, I don't really know how else to put it. Him just throwing temper tantrums on the court, basically being about as open about a trade request publicly as you can be without actually getting fined, and then him not actually being moved. All of these internal things about how much these players are not liking the way John Beilein is running things, and now, potentially getting rid of a guy before he even finishes his first full season of a 5-year contract. And this is not uncommon. I definitely feel like the leash has been shortened on coaches around the NBA and really in professional sports in general now, where guys getting fired within 2 seasons really rarely happened unless there was some kind of scandal in the past. And now it seems like that's happening all the time, where 2 seasons is kind of like, okay, if we're not seeing legitimate progress, we have to let you go. So it's a tough situation, but again, maybe it was just something we should have seen coming. This whole college coaching to the NBA thing just doesn't really work out all that often, specifically with older guys. Like the two big name college coaches in the NBA that are making it work right now are Brad Stevens, who is definitely younger, was very successful at Butler, and just from a scheme standpoint, from a personality standpoint, it seemed like he was really, like, I had very little doubt that it was going to work out for Brad Stevens because he was such a good college coach, because he had this demeanor that just made it seem like he was going to be calm, cool, collected. He wasn't like a hardcore college coach that was yelling and screaming at his players in college, because I don't think that necessarily works in the NBA. So not having that type of personality, I feel like translated well. And then the other big name is Billy Donovan, who has kind of been trashed as a coach for the first few seasons, at least when KD was there, and then he left, and then people just talked about how his offense wasn't very good, and it was all this Russ and Paul George isolation stuff. But now that he has a team that plays as a team, he looks like a really good NBA coach. So his perception has definitely been up and down, but I think at this point he's kind of established himself as a good long-term coach for this team. And both of those guys were extremely successful in college. I mean, if Billy Donovan had continued his run of success at Florida, he probably would have ended up with the most wins in NCAA history. He was on pace to do that in terms of reaching certain benchmarks by the age that he was at when he got that amount of wins. If he'd continued that success and coached for a long time in college, he probably was going to end up with the most wins ever in NCAA history. And then Brad Stevens continually brought Butler teams that just simply weren't as talented really late into the tournament. So these are really successful college guys that it's worked out for them in the NBA. And Beilein was another really successful college coach, but I do think that age played a factor here, and coaching style plays a factor as well. Now, Billy Donovan is a feisty guy, so he doesn't have definitely like the same kind of temperament that Brad Stevens does, but I think he's just a little bit more of a new school college coach, and I think that was probably the biggest issue here for Beilein, was just that older school approach of, I mean, all coaches are disciplined, right? But this is definitely more of a college vibe. At least that's what I'm getting from the reports that I'm reading, that players were just weren't interested in being coached in the way that he wanted to coach them. And my original optimism just kind of threw that out the window, I guess, because I just have always thought of him as a good coach, and I figured that would translate. And then I thought the offense that he was going to bring would have been really good for a team that, in terms of their future outlook, is going to depend a lot on the development of guys like Darius Garland and Colin Sexton. And I felt like he was going to be really good for them. But it's just all of these veterans that are on this team. And I'm sure the young guys aren't super happy with him either, but the veterans on this team apparently pretty immediately just decided that this was not going to work. So moving forward from here, it looks like he's going to get canned. And I mean, I guess Bickerstaff is going to take over. I highly, highly doubt that he would be the long-term solution for this team, because this has happened at least once for him, where he took over on an interim basis and then got the long-term job and then got fired. I think it was in Memphis most recently for him. So even though they view him as a potential long-term head coach in the future, as again part of a succession plan after Beilein stepped down, I don't know that necessarily he would be their top candidate at the moment, and they'll probably explore other options. I'm really interested to see what happens with the money here as well. I mean, firing a guy or having him resign within the first year of a 5-year contract, I mean, Beilein is going to be getting a lot of money. And if he goes back to college, which I think he will be a highly sought after college coach. This will probably not change his perception very much at all in the college ranks. Still a very good college coach. It's just the NBA thing wasn't going to work. The personalities are completely different, and it's so much different coaching grown men than 18 and 19-year-olds that are probably a little bit more willing to listen regardless of your communication style. Whereas in the NBA, these are grown men. You have to consider how you're talking to them. You have to maybe be a little bit more reserved in your discipline and reserved in your, just the way that you're communicating with these guys in terms of when they're doing things wrong. There's bigger egos. You have to be a little bit more careful about making them upset because they're a little bit more vocal than maybe your typical college player would be, because you're holding over their head. If you just listen, I'll get you to the NBA. If you just listen, we'll be a really good team. NBA players, when they're grown men, 28, 29, 30 years old, don't typically react well to that kind of discipline. So it definitely looks like John Beilein's going to be gone. I'm interested to see who they pick to replace, but honestly, in the long term, I don't necessarily think that this is the biggest issue for this team. I think that they're still looking for some foundational pieces. Garland has had an okay rookie season, and maybe you can blame all of the struggles on Beilein this season if you want to, but I don't think that would be accurate. I still think that they definitely have plenty of issues to work through moving forward, and it's going to be interesting to see how they try and remedy this situation. They're going to have another high draft pick this offseason in a draft class that doesn't look great, and this Cavs team right now is the prototypical rebuilding, but doesn't necessarily look like they're going to be heading in the right direction anytime soon type of team, and that's unfortunate for Cavs fans, but that's just kind of where we are, and I don't think that the Beilein firing or resigning or whatever is necessarily going to be some big fix for this team. But there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on the screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.